Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azzawi. Two Iraqi MPs and scores of candidates from al-Iraqiya list have been assassinated, wounded or gone underground. The killers have not been apprehended. The slain members espouse Iraqi nationalism, vowed to fight Iran's influence in Iraq and punish corrupt politicians. Al-Iraqiya leaders accuse Iran and its proxies of direct responsibility for these murders. Experts assert that the current sectarian strife, as well as the prolonged political deadlock, will spawn more violence against those who raise the banner of Iraqi nationalism. To find out who is killing al-Iraqiya elected MPs and candidates and why, I am delighted to welcome from Amman Salih al-Mutalaq, leader of the Iraqi National Dialogue Front, one of the largest components of al-Iraqiya coalition. And from London, by Patrick Coburn, a reporter with the British newspaper The Independent, who writes frequently about Iraq. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Salih al-Mutalaq, let us go to the very heart of the matter. Who is killing the elected MPs and candidates of al-Iraqiya list?
Well, to decide who is killing those people, because till now the government have not found or gave any evidences on who is killing those people. So we have to go to the objectives of those people. Who has the objective to create chaos and instability in Iraq? And who has the objectives to ban people from going to the election, either by killing them or by isolating them? You will find out that the only country who is doing that is Iran. And if you want an explanation for that, we will go on and explaining why we think it is Iran.
So you pointed the figure at Iran. Let me first of all see if Patrick will accept that explanation, or he has a different reasoning for that. Go ahead, Patrick.
I think it's very doubtful that it's Iran behind it. And one can never be sure in Iraq, obviously. I think it's much more likely that it's al-Qaeda in Iraq. They opposed the election. They assassinate people. They have a motive here. I don't see why the Iranians should want to eliminate members of al-Iraqiya. So, you can never be certain in Iraq because such is the level of violence. But I think it's much more likely that al-Qaeda is behind these killings.
Before I go back to Dr. Salih al-Mutalaq, let me ask you then, if it is al-Qaeda behind this assassination and assassination attempts, how come is it somehow is limited to the al-Iraqiya list? Definitely they cannot reach Kurdistan. There is nothing against the Kurds, but also, for instance, the state of the law or the National Iraqi Alliance have not been assassinated. Why al-Iraqiya per se?
Well, it's easier in Sunni areas, I think, for them to kill them. It could be difficult for al-Qaeda to go and kill somebody in Nasiriyah or in Basra. That's one of the reasons for thinking it's al-Qaeda who's doing it. Likewise, attacks in Mosul. It's unlikely that the Iranians would be able to do that there or have proxies able to do that for them there.
You pointed the figure at Iran, Salih al-Mutalaq. Now it's your chance to explain, perhaps at length, what do you mean by that?
Well, what is happening in Iraq is definitely an external agenda. So who has the benefit from that? Let us name those who are, who have the agenda in Iraq, and they are external. One is the United States, two is the Arab countries, third is Turkey, fourth is Israel, and fifth is Iran. The United States has no interest now to create chaos and instability in Iraq because they want to leave and they want a stable Iraq before they leave. The Arab countries, historically, they benefited a lot from a stable Iraq. Turkey has always benefited from a strong and stable Iraq, and they had a huge amount of money delivered to Iran through the good relations between a stable Iraq and Turkey. If you go to Israel, Israel has already done what they wanted. They removed the regime. They made a weak Iraq, which does not show any danger to them. So I think they had done in Iraq more than they wanted, and they have stated that in many times. The only one which is left is Iran. Iran has objectives to destabilize Iraq for many reasons. Historically, they have the revenge on Iraq. If you go to also the benefit from that for the Iranian side, they want a weak Iraq because they are demanding compensations for what happened during the war. And they can only get that through a weak Iraq. When Iraq is strong, they cannot get what they claim for. And if you look also at the targets, the victims, who are they? They are the previous pilots who fought Iran. They are the previous leaders in the previous military. They are the one who has a national trend, and they want to have a country which is led by a non-sectarian government. Iran has always wanted a sectarian government in Iraq, and they want a weak Iraq. To answer Mr. Patrick, about al-Qaeda, I agree with him. It is al-Qaeda, but who is supporting al-Qaeda? The support of al-Qaeda. We have evidences that the training is being done in Iran, and also if you look at the weapons, the explosive that's being used in Iraq. 90%
Let me run
of
that by
or more.
Patrick, if you don't mind, Salih al-Mutalaq. Perhaps the trigger is al-Qaeda, that's what he's saying, but the actual direction and the order comes from Tehran.
No, I really don't agree. There was, it's in the Iranian interests to either support the present government. Why should it want to get rid of the present government of Iraq when the people who make it up are largely sympathetic to Iran? They are Shia like
But then again,
like
Patrick,
Iran.
those who assassinated or those who were running for office, they're not members of the current government. They were supposed to replace the current government.
Yeah, but it's unlikely that that will happen. I mean, I don't think that we're at a stage where al-Iraqiya is about to replace the present government. I mean, at the moment we have stalemate. I think also, in a place like Mosul, al-Qaeda is very much, generates its own funds through protection rackets. It's largely autonomous. It gets some things from outside. But unfortunately, in there and in Diyala, generally it can, it's well armed, it can raise as much money, a certain amount of money. I think that a lot of the violence in both places is self-generating.
There was a statement by the former National Security Advisor, Muwafaq al-Rubai. I will get a response from you, Patrick, before I run it by Salih al-Mutalaq to find out what actually lies behind it. And he said, Iran's influence in Iraq is absolutely paramount. And General Soleimani, who is the head of the Quds Force, part of the Iran's Revolutionary Guard, is actually the person in charge of the Iraqi file. This is a person who belongs to the National Iraqi Alliance, headed by Ammar al-Hakim. And this is a group that actually was raised in Iran and pretty much financed by Iran and pretty much sent by Iran after the regime collapsed. For him to say that, it's quite telling, isn't it, Patrick?
Yeah, but I think it's telling in favor of my argument that, I mean, yes, Muwafaq al-Rubai is quite right, and I mean, there's plenty of personal experience about the enormous influence of Iran in Iraq. He's right about General Soleimani, but in that case, because they're so influential, they don't find it necessary. I'd be amazed if they found it necessary to start shooting members of one political party, of al-Iraqiya, of people at a lower level in politics. I think that they're extremely powerful, and I think they've got absolutely no need to do that.
Salih al-Mutalaq, brief comment on what Muwafaq al-Rubai said.
Well, we've been saying to both the Americans and the British for a long time that the Iranians are there and their intelligences are there and they're going to corrupt the country. And at that time, a few years ago, they said, well, you know, you think that under every tree in Iraq there is an Iranian. And they found out later on that maybe under each tree there are 2 Iranians. It is very clear now that Iran has penetrated in all the government offices, and Iran has the interest of destabilize the country. Iran is pushing to create a vacuum in Iraq in order to fill that vacuum after the leaving of the United States troops. And Ahmadinejad himself said that publicly, that Iran is the one who is going to fill that vacuum. And he said that the war with the American will be in Baghdad streets, not in Iran.
Let me add one more sentence, and that is a quote by Ahmadinejad to what you've said, and let me run it by Patrick, when he said, we will never allow the Ba'athists to come back and rule Iraq again. And al-Iraqiya list, no matter how you cut it, somehow is viewed inside Iraq as well outside Iraq, that it is in one way or another supported by, and perhaps a few figures of them, including Ayad Allawi, who is a former Ba'athist, that this is an umbrella, and hence you can understand why Iran is dead against al-Iraqiya list.
You know, I find it very depressing about Iraqi politics. I think that, you know, yes, you're quite right that a large proportion of people, of Iraqis, particularly Shia Iraqis, have this exaggerated, paranoid idea that the Ba'ath Party is going to come back and massacre them. And the government and the ruling parties play this up. But by the same token, I think there's an exaggerated idea on the part of al-Iraqiya, on the part perhaps of the Sunni Arab community, about Iranian influence. Is that very strong? Yes. But is it wholly paramount? No. And I think that anybody who interferes in Iraq, like the Americans, like the Iranians, there's a limit to the influence that they can exert. And once they get beyond a certain point, then I think the Iranians will get in trouble just as the Americans did.
We heard 2 explanations, Salih al-Mutalaq. One of them is by you, it is Iran all the way. And we heard Patrick Coburn saying it's al-Qaeda. There is a third explanation, and that is writers, experts, and politicians, they refer to it, and that is the political deadlock and stability in Iraq, this sectarian tension. Whenever there is this polarization of Iraqi politics, sooner or later you'll find MPs and candidates being assassinated. Do you buy that argument, and that is the current impasse is contributing to these murders?
Well, you know, these ideas does not contradict with each other. I agree that most of these events, what happens in Iraq, are al-Qaeda behind it. But I am saying that al-Qaeda, we have an Iranian al-Qaeda in Iraq, as it is in Pakistan and Afghanistan, that is being supported by Iran. Iran would support anyone who create the instability in Iraq in order to make the vacuum in Iraq, in order to fully control Iraq. Iran failed to convince the Shiite that they are their allies after all what they had done to the Shiite. Therefore, they want to go further and fill the vacuum in Iraq. And Iran, as you know, has always been the obstacle for not forming the government till now. Iran is pressing to unite the 2 coalitions in a sectarian way in order to bring back sectarianism in Iraq. And all this does not differ very much from what al-Qaeda is doing. Both of them, they want to create instability in the country. So, and they have the same aim. Therefore, they can cooperate. Now, all the weapons. Give me a country which has more weapon in Iraq, explosive weapon, as I said, more than 90%
it has become
of
amply
these
clear,
weapons
Saleh
were...
al-Mutalaq. You don't have to convince me or Patrick Coburn that most of the sophisticated weapons have been confiscated by the American forces as well as Iraqi forces that is coming from the Iranian border. There is no discussion.
Then why do you have a doubt that Iran is doing that?
Well, let me ask the same question to Patrick Coburn, and that is, comment about instability and political deadlock contributing to these murders. Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let me say, we're talking as if it was just politicians who got killed in Iraq. There's still an extraordinary level of violence. I think 8 or 9 people were killed in Mosul today. Some areas worse than others, Diyala, Baquba, and so forth. So there's an extraordinarily high level of violence. Does the political stalemate increase this? Yes, I think, but it takes away any sense of things getting better, of momentum being built up towards progress, towards Iraq becoming peaceable again. I always find it extraordinarily annoying here in Europe when people ask me, is Iraq better? Well, it is better than it was 3 years ago when we were having 3,000 dead a month, but we're still having 200 or 300 people killed, including these politicians. So there's still an extraordinarily high level of instability.
Saleh al-Mutalaq, let's go to the leader of al-Iraqiya list, and that is Ayad Allawi, who has stated very clearly that there was an attempt on his life. He was informed by the Americans that there is a plot to kill him, perhaps on his way from Baghdad to the Baghdad International Airport. A sniper might be somewhere there, whether with the consent of the Iraqi government or the Iraqi government looking the other way around. How do you look at the accusation that preventing him from using the old military airport of al-Mutalaq is one way or another is an Iraqi plot in order to get rid of him?
Well, it's becoming very clear that they are targeting the Iraqi leaders and all the nationalist leaders in Iraq. As you know, I am outside Iraq now because I have a serious threat. And that information came to me not from the street, from official organizations inside the government, that those people who are going to target us are coming from outside, and they stated where they come from.
They will be coming from where?
As I said, from Iran. From Iran. Let me say what the Iranian did before the election and during the election. They banned people from the elections, about 500 people. Some of them are prominent figures in politics in Iraq. And that order came directly from Ali Khamenei to Ahmed al-Chalabi, and Ahmed al-Chalabi did that. And that was also stated by the American leaders in Iraq. Mr. Patrias and the Christopher Hale, all of them they said Qasim Soleimani and Ali Khamenei are the one. After that, they gave the orders, and after that they started the killing of also the leaders of al-Iraqiya. Some of al-Iraqiya were being imprisoned before the election by the government, by some organization which is directly controlled by the Iranians. And they, even though they won in the election while they were in the prison, but they prevented them from being in the parliament. All these things are directly coming from Iran. So if Iran is doing all that, so why should we have a doubt that Iran is responsible and is the one who is doing the chaos thing in Iraq? Iran, Mr. Jassim, Iran is under sanction, and this sanction is maybe going to be increased. It wants a window towards Iraq. It wants a way that smuggle what they want through Iraq, and I also
point well taken, Saleh al-Mutalaq. Point well taken. But let me go to Patrick. If Al-Qaeda was responsible, and it was responsible for spectacular killings and operations in Iraq. We saw ministries and we saw organization and we saw big events in different parts of Iraq. And every now and again we would see some of those people captured and confessing their crimes on television. How come with the killing of these candidates and MPs? None of them were captured, and we don't see them on television.
Well, you know, I'm very dubious in the first place about these television confessions. You know, we've been having these since we first saw them en masse, actually, in I think the end of 2004 in Mosul. But you know, the people, many of whom had clearly been ill-treated or tortured. So I don't give much credit to these television confessions. You know, but going to another point, I mean, as Saleh al-Mutalaq was talking about Iran and so forth, I think one of the unfortunate things that's happening now is the longer that different Iraqi political parties cannot agree on a new government, that opens the door more and more to foreign intervention, whether it's by the Iranians or the Turks or the Americans or the Syrians or whoever. I think that's the growing trend
is that by proxy?
Because we have the stalemate.
Is that by proxy, by proxies, Patrick Coburn, or by actually people coming from across the border?
I think it's mostly by proxy. You know, I mean, Iraq, as you know, it's not easy for a foreigner to operate. You know, the idea that foreign assassins come in, I think, you know, is unlikely. Maybe we've had suicide bombers from abroad, but otherwise it's difficult for a foreigner to operate in Iraq. And unfortunately, there are all too many people who are very Iraqis who are extremely skilled at assassination or organizing bomb attacks. I don't think we have to go abroad to find out who actually organizes these different killings and mass bombings.
Final question, Saleh al-Mutalaq. Will these assassination attempts and actual murders against al-Iraqiya people and against the voice of Iraqi nationalism will continue?
Well, it will continue until sectarianism will end and until the Iranian influence will be limited to certain degrees. Otherwise, if the national trend cannot govern this time, Iraq, as you know, is in a turning point. So it will either be going to sectarianism again and to the influence of the Iranians, or it will be part of the civilized countries, and then it will have a different shape. I am sure if there will be if they give a chance for al-Iraqiya to govern this time, then things will change a lot. The external relations with the countries around us will be different. The influence of Iran will be limited. The relation with the Western countries will be different. And then we will be part, as I said, of the civilized world. Before I finish my statements, I want to ask Mr. Patrick, who you think is blocking the formation of the government now? Is it really the politicians inside, or there are orders from Iran?
Let me get a very quick answer from Patrick, and then we close the show. Go ahead, Patrick.
I think it's primarily Iraqi politicians who aren't agreeing. That, I think, opens the door to foreign influence. But I think that the basic divisions are within Iraq. And forgive me saying so, I think it's self-deception to believe anything else.
Patrick Coburn, Saleh al-Mutalaq, gentlemen, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq. To watch the show online, please visit our website, aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, this is Jassim Azzawi wishing you a fabulous week.